In this video we talk about the Fenix 847mm AMOLED watches. I will focus on the updates that the flagship generation of watches has received. My 47mm is titanium plus sapphire with a 22mm quick fit silicone strap that can be quickly removed. And the 51mm version in the review is carbon, sapphire and a similar 26mm strap. By the way, an interesting observation is that regardless of size, both the medium 47mm version and the larger 51mm version of the watch have displays of the same size, 1.4 inches diagonally, and the same resolution. 454 more pixels. The larger watch in the solar version also has the same display size, except the 47mm solar watch has a smaller diagonal of 1.3 inches. And of course the solar versions with MIPI displays have a lower resolution. 260x260 and 280 pixels respectively. For example, on my 51mm watch I can see the pixels of dial very clearly, the pixelated edges of the dial, and some other elements on the screen. Well, the noticeably large size of the watch seems justified by the large dark ring around the display. This refers to the enlarged solar charging element of the watch. The solar versions and the new approach to solar charging makes this display a bit clearer. And yes, so as not to return to the main hardware, again, the memory in both watches from this video is 32 gigabytes. So there should be enough space for maps, music and voice notes with geotags. There's no need to worry too much. Wireless technologies. Both have Bluetooth, ANT+ for external sensors, Wi-Fi and NFC. For contactless payment via Garmin Pay. All of this is included here. Regarding GPS, both models are fully equipped. Dual-band geolocation with a multitude of settings. So, the cases of the new watches maintain visual continuity in design with the previous generation, but you can immediately notice a kind of protective panel for the barometer and microphone on the side. And here's something you can't help but notice while using it. These are new inductive buttons that do not have direct contact with the electronic insides of the watches. They are also referred to as leak-proof. In fact, these buttons wirelessly control functions using induction. This version of buttons is typically used in diving watches, and this is also the reason for changing the button mechanism, because the Fenix 8 also supports diving. Such watches are suitable for scuba diving and snorkeling with a stated maximum diving depth of 40 meters. And the distinction of these watches, of course, also lies in the presence of a depth sensor here, compared to their predecessors which did not have it, although, surprisingly, the maximum pressure these watches can withstand is stated to be at the same level as the previous generation, at 10 atmospheres. Even though these watches are still certified for diving. What should be said immediately about these buttons? They definitely feel different from the previous generation. And to ensure the user understands that the function has been activated upon pressing, a simple vibration is used here. Important and interesting for every user is the information about the autonomy of the watches. There are two aspects here: everyday use and active use for sports. I'll start with the second. Well, firstly, in my experience, there has never been an activity that could drain any of the Garmin watches I've reviewed. But I'm not an ultra runner, for example, nor do I engage in long hiking. So, even the large version of the Fenix Solar with solar charging can track activity with all navigation systems, up to 92 hours continuously, and up to 68 hours without solar charging. And my other test subject, the 47mm AMOLED Fenix, can track activity for up to 38 hours, without the always-on display feature, and up to 30 hours with the always-on display. And all of this with maximum use of satellite navigation systems. My longest winter-spring activity with these watches lasted no more than 4 hours, so it's clear that they used very little. Even during noticeable cold, they consumed little charge. Moreover, even on the AMOLED version, I always use the always-on display because frankly it's very convenient, and still the watches hold their charge very well, definitely not less than what the manufacturer claims. And if we talk about the 47 AMOLED version, I personally always use them in AOD mode. I only measure oxygen at night, and at night the night screen with red color display is also activated. For my main activities, which are running, walking and cycling, all navigation systems are operational. 2 to 3 times a week I use the watch for strength training. In general, every day I have activities ranging from half an hour to an hour, and once a week or so. A long activity with navigation on the watch. I want to clarify that for measuring heart rate, I use an external Garmin heart rate monitor connected to the watch. And along with the bicycle, I also connect speed and cadence sensors to the watch. And with such usage, the AMOLED watch lasts me a week, which, considering my settings, can even be said to be a bit more than what the manufacturer claims. By the way, my brightness. The display brightness is set to 2/3. And of course you can get even more from such a watch. Autonomy, you can disable screen activation. Using gestures, you can turn off nighttime oxygen level measurements and use location tracking with less precision. Or at least activate automatic settings for location. And this way, you might add 1 or even several extra days of battery life. Well, but higher data accuracy and user convenience are much more important to me. Another matter is the 51mm solar version. Not only does the screen help save energy, but there's also solar charging. Well, during the winter and now, in the spring, it has been used quite modestly by me. And literally from the charging activity graph on the watch, you can see exactly when I was outside. In short, modest solar energy readings, possibly because it's often cloudy outside now. Well, and at home near the window, the charging is quite symbolic. And I think to myself that somewhere on a trip, such charging would be much more appropriate. Regarding the brightness of the backlight, I have it set to 20%. Because that's really enough in the dark, and in the sunlight, the screen is even more visible without the backlight. Honestly, I haven't even had the opportunity to completely discharge this watch in any way. It is too resilient in terms of battery life. Here, unlike the AMOLED version, even the system doesn't natively show the battery percentage. The watch only shows the number of days remaining. Until the battery is discharged. The new and interesting thing is that the watch has a speaker and a microphone. And these are, of course, naturally features inherent to smartwatches. Especially since Garmin now has its own version of voice control for watches, and at the very least probably every user of this voice control feature for watches will use it. Or uses voice activation for timers. It's just incredibly convenient, I use it all the time. But you can also set alarms, adjust brightness, start workouts with a port, and turn on the flashlight. In short, literally every function can be activated by voice, just hold the button and say what needs to be done. Everything works quite clearly and well. Let's reduce the brightness to 19%. Let's reduce the brightness to 19%. And in general, if you don't know what to ask the watch or how to make a request to it, just say, "What can I say?" And after this magic phrase, it will show you a small list of basic commands. Start was start running, run. Start gravel bike activity. Voice notes with geolocation tagging directly on the watch. Something new, but also useful. This is how it looks, this is how it sounds when it's already recorded. Chi repeated many times. Chi chi chi. It's like an echo that goes on and on, creating a rhythmic pattern that's both mesmerizing and endless. Let's turn it off and listen to how it sounds directly on the watch itself. For phone calls, of course, both watches can also be used. Roughly speaking, they work as Bluetooth during a call. A headset, relative to the phone. And again, everything works fine here. This is how the watch looks during a call. Probably due to the high level of water resistance of the watch, the speaker sounds quite compressed, with an emphasis on high frequencies. Write about your impressions in the comments. And be sure not to forget to do this, to leave some feedback. Although through the speaker, you can not only talk but also even listen to music if You add it to the memory or download it in an app like YouTube Music. By the way, along with the new speaker, new sounds have also been added for sports activities. The start, end of an activity, high heart rate warnings, the sound for a new lap, as well as sounds for the timer, alarm, and more. All of these are different from what they were before. Sounds? And I must say the new sounds on the watches are quite pleasant. You could even say they sound somewhat more modern, and I like that. As always, with an Android smartphone, it's a bit more convenient to reply using ready-made templates through the watch if you receive something, for example, in Messenger. But with an iPhone, you can only view messages. However, a new alternative has appeared. Now you can access Siri on your smartphone from the watch and possibly use it to reply to messages. Again, it's far from the most convenient, but at least it's an option for handling replies. Eat it. Do you want to reply? Yes? What do you want to say right away? To the lady? It was nice to read your new messages. The WhatsApp message says it was nice to read your new messages. Yes, send it. These watches probably have tracking for, well, practically any type of sport. The list of supported sports is simply enormous. For example, I recently tried paddle tennis, and it turned out that the watches support tracking this activity. All types of sports are accessible by pressing the top right button, but the interface has changed compared to previous models. And in this section there are two parts. These are the activities where all types of sports are hidden. And below are other functions, just as a list. Interestingly, it's not necessary to constantly enter the activities section. You can pin a couple of your most frequent activities at the top. For example, running and cycling. That's how they are located here for me. The sports activities themselves now have what seems like 3 screens at once. This is the initial screen with settings and suggestions. I often take daily ones here. Tips. For running. You can also connect, for example, a chest heart rate sensor here, if it hasn't automatically attached itself. Another screen shows the data from the workout itself, and there's also a third screen when you swipe from side to side. This is the music, and I noticed that I almost never use this third screen with music control. Well, at least when it comes to switching to it by swiping. If I want to control the music, I usually just hold down the bottom left button and the music control opens. It's somehow more convenient for me. I've gotten quite used to it. It's somehow more intuitive for me. By the way, I recently activated a strength training plan. I just haven't started it yet. I really wanted to test how accurately the new Fenix watches track strength training. Honestly, I didn't notice any striking difference in terms of strength workouts. It seems to me that the watches track repetitions quite adequately, relatively adequately, and during a general strength workout they perform quite well. The watch itself determines what exactly I was doing. Well, of course, the watch can make mistakes, for example, when I'm lifting dumbbells not very rhythmically, holding at the top point, and then slowly releasing. They can get confused, it might be incorrect. The number of repetitions counted might be wrong, although it's not surprising in such a situation. Although it generally looks quite magical when you just start a general strength workout, do 4 to 6 repetitions, and the watch automatically starts the exercise, meaning it senses that you have started working out, and it counts those repetitions that you already started doing before the set began. Or whatever the correct term is, please let me know in the comments. I'm not very knowledgeable about the terminology. Navigation has definitely become more convenient thanks to the quick unlocking of the touchscreen. Overall, the menu and the organization of settings have undergone some cosmetic changes. For me, as someone who uses my friend's routes with Strava, probably a little. It's become more convenient to find saved routes. This, of course, is very good. Regarding the accuracy of movement recording, I'll repeat, I use all available systems at once. This might drain the battery a bit more of the watches, but accuracy is more important to me. And I haven't had any issues with the accuracy of the route and distance in this mode. But if you choose another option, it may be noticeable that the track slightly doesn't match the paths on the maps, even in walking mode. So choose for yourself how much accuracy you need. I choose only all systems because especially during fast movement, like on a bicycle, it can even affect the training results. And when using all systems, even in wooded areas on MTB routes, the track, in my opinion, is accurate. This is important to me because the watch is my only bike computer at the moment. As for recording altitude and movements, I haven't noticed any major errors. More precisely, I did notice, but that was the work of the GPS in our rather turbulent region. The new sensors look completely different, and most importantly, they are not only slightly differently constructed, but they also gained the ability to measure pulse, oxygen level, and temperature, and even perform an electrocardiogram. As for the accuracy of the pulse sensors, to be honest, I don't see the point in testing and checking them at all. Even in the 4th generation, the previous one, now the 5th generation is installed here, these sensors were relatively decent. These are optical sensors, and during active movements, they still won't give you perfect measurement results. Pulse. Especially during strength training, there's practically no chance of getting perfect pulse readings. So, if you want accurate data, good pulse readings during runs or so, just get yourself a chest strap heart rate monitor. This is practically the only normal way to get accurate data. Therefore, a chest strap heart rate monitor is everything for us. The 8th Fenix series has become a bit, or perhaps even noticeably, more functional. Of course, along with the features, the price also goes up. And I think that not every owner, for example, of the previous Fenix 7 series will have enough incentives to make this upgrade, especially when it comes to the larger 51, a miniature version from the Solar series. MIP, memory and pixel display. There, the price is already noticeably significant. Although, in my opinion, both watches absolutely justify their cost with their capabilities. Well, especially if you are the owner of much older versions, or if you simply have the opportunity to do so, then why not upgrade? And for someone probably, the incentive to purchase might be the opportunity to try the Fenix with an AMOLED display or the Fenix with a built-in speaker and microphone. This might also be more interesting to someone.